What's up, guys? Welcome to some weird stuff that we're about to do. So, one of my friends reached out to me today and said that she wants to build a plastic scale model replica of her dad's muscle car. So, she asked me some of the basic tools and, like, kind of the process behind how you do that. So, we're going to take a look at the very basics of building a plastic scale model. It should be pretty fun, okay? So, first and foremost, some basic tools that you're going to need. First things first, you're going to need side cutters. So that's something like this right here. So these are not your typical wire cutters that you would buy at the Walmart or the Home Depot. Okay, so these are very fine tipped, and they have a specific angle on them designed to pull parts off of the trees easily. What does that look like, you ask? Well, let's take a look. So this is a 1962 Impala. It's made by AMT Ertl, which is not a company that makes the greatest models on the planet, but it is what it is. So when you very first start, building a kit, you're going to see parts on a plastic tree like this. You'll have the body of your car, and then you'll have various other components. So when you first break your kit out of the box, first thing that you're going to do is get the instructions. Instructions are key, friends. Follow instructions. Okay, so first things first, instructions, right? Like, follow the instructions. So I recommend what you do with the instructions is get to the step that you're on, okay? And then fold up the instructions, with that step out so you can see it, and then put it somewhere easily, seen. Right, so some of the parts I've already pre-painted for this kit. So here you have engine block half and a transmission, and these are already painted. They were originally white plastic, as you see on the inside. So we'll talk about how I got to that point. But first and foremost, let's talk about how you get parts off the tree. So you get your side cutters, and you want to take the flat part of your side cutter and put it up against the part, and just very gently with the tip of the cutters. I don't know if you can kind of see that there. The very tip of the cutters, just cut it off. Okay. So we'll go again, and you always want to support the part, like touch the part when you're cutting it off, so it doesn't fly off into space. All right, so very simple. You cut your part off there, and then set your tree aside. Okay, so pretty straightforward so far. Now, once you've got your part separated, you'll notice, and you won't be able to see this on camera. I'm not even going to try to show you, but there's a little bit of the plastic tree left that the side cutter didn't get off. You have a couple of options to remove that. So this, it looks like a dental pick. It's actually not. It's designed for models. And so you can use this little tool to remove some of that excess plastic nice and easily. But if you don't have that, there are some very simple things that you can use. Sandpaper is your friend, okay? So what I like is I have these sandpapers here that are on like foam. I like them a lot. And so it does not take a very coarse grit to remove the excess plastic. So just give it a nice little, smooth out there. And you want to make sure that you remove that prior to trying to paint or glue the parts together, because if you don't, they won't fit correctly, and you may end up having to remove paint. Now, you may also see, as you're looking at parts that you have removed, that there is what appears to be some excess plastic, like we call it flash, and it's just where the injection mold, because that's how these model kits are made, is injection molded plastic, where that plastic has kind of gotten a little bit too much. And so that's where a very sharp X-Acto knife comes in very handy, because you can just trim that little bit off of there very carefully so as you don't damage yourself, right? But you can just trim that little extra bit off of there, and it's very simple, okay? And then anytime you remove plastic, just give it that once over. There's actually a little bit more on there. This may seem like a long, tedious process, but I promise you, the more time and effort you put into it on the front side, the better your end state result will be, and the more realistic you can make the model look. So there you have parts. Now, you might say to yourself, well, some of the parts that he's got are already painted, but they're not assembled. You're right. So does that mean that we should then paint this intake manifold before we assemble it? Not necessarily. So here's why. So with this particular model, I did not actually intend to build the whole car. So normally, you would want to assemble the engine block. Now, I don't know if you can see this on camera. You probably can. There is a definite seam between these parts, okay? So now if I get it lined up just absolutely perfectly and give it a little pressure, you can still see the seam, like a lot, right? And it's very unsightly. It doesn't look good at all and does not give a realistic look to the kit. So now there will be other pieces, parts added to this thing that will cover up some of the gaps and seams, like you see, you know, with the oil pan on there and stuff like that. But it's really not the way you want to go. So I honestly don't remember when I started this kit or why I pre-painted these pieces. That's not normally how I do it. It's not how anybody does it. There are some things that you pre-paint that are very, very small. They're easier to paint on the tree. So like, you know, fan belts and stuff like that, you can do the majority of the painting and just touch it up after you take it off the tree. But for the most part, you want to put parts together before you paint them, which I don't know why I didn't do. And looking at these, I don't even think I sanded them after I took them off the tree. Very deeply concerning. I don't know why I did that. I have so many model kits that I've had for years, and I don't necessarily know what I was intending with some of these things. So very, very simple. Before you glue parts together, you want to take and sand lightly the joint to remove any paint that might be in the joint, or to give it a nice kind of roughed up surface so that it can bond well. You don't need to take off a lot of plastic. In fact, the goal should simply just be to, you know, make that plastic even, and then give the glue a good surface to bond to. So yeah, I mean, don't get crazy with it, right? Like, you don't have to. It's a little bit too coarse. Yeah, don't get crazy with it and be like, you know, carving stuff up. But you can certainly use sandpapers that you buy at the Walmart or the Home Depot or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. Just be careful. Don't use too coarse a grit of sandpaper, because so plastic models are made out of styrene, which is a type of plastic that's not super dissimilar to styrofoam. And styrene is a very soft plastic, and it gets mangled pretty easily. So the more gentle you are, the better. I know a lot of people who use nail files for this type of purpose, and certainly they make a lot of specialty tools that I have, but this is about, like, you know, the beginner. So I like nail files, but just be careful with them, because a lot of nail files are very, very coarse. Now, when it comes to the glue that you're going to use to bond these things, you have a few options. So this is like your standard Testors, you know, model glue that you get at any old little hobby store. It's pretty cool. I haven't used it freaking ever. It's pretty cool because it has like the little needle applicator and stuff. That being said, I don't like it and I don't use it. So where's mine? Here it is. So this is what I use. So this is made by Tamiya, which is a very popular model company, and this is their extra thin cement. This is what I prefer to use, because you don't get globules of glue, and it's very easy to precisely applicate it. So the way this stuff works is you use this teeny tiny applicator brush, and you're literally going to paint the glue onto the seams where they will touch. Okay. Now, if you have any paint or, you know, flashing or anything like that that will interfere with this glue, it does not work its best. Okay, so yeah, so you're simply going to apply the glue, and this Tamiya glue, like, a lot of people shy away from Tamiya stuff because they think it's expensive, and I guess to a degree it is, but I tell you what, it's super worth it in terms of, you know, quality of your finished product and stuff. So yeah, very carefully so as not to get your fingers into the glue, because the glue softens the plastic. That's how model cement works. It softens the plastic and then allows it to essentially chemically weld itself together. So once you get the parts together, you want to apply some pressure to it, and let that chemical process work. And then if you test fit properly before you glue it, there shouldn't be any major gaps unless there's problems with the part, which happens a lot. But we'll get into how to fix that in a minute. Okay, so you give it some pressure and kind of pinch it together, and yeah, it looks like it's bonding pretty well. It's lined up fairly well, so no issues there. So there you have that. Now, then we would go on and continue to assemble this motor. But we're not going to do that because we're wanting a once-over of all the basics. So we'll put that stuff aside, and let's take a look at something else that we can mess with a little bit so you can see some more of the Y4s and how-tos. I suppose we could do a seat. Well, I don't want to do a seat. We can do a seat. We can do a seat. So this particular model kit I'm building a diorama of like junkyard cars, and that's what this one is going to be for. But so again, you know, your side cutters, right? Get it nice flush up against the plastic and nice and gently using just the tips, pop it off, right? So there we have our little seat, and then we're going to go through the exact same process that we did a moment ago, where we're going to take off that excess little bit of plastic. We'll smooth it out, make it all nice and pretty. Now you've got to take a look at parts, because I don't know if you can see it on camera. You cannot. There's actually a seam running down the edge of this seat here that shouldn't be there, but it's, you know, a product of the injection molding. So you just want to gently, you know, using your sandpaper or your files or whatever you're going to use, remove that unnecessary contouring and make it look all pretty. Now this particular kit is made by a company called AMT Ertel, who I don't believe is still in business. It might be, I don't know. They were really popular for a long time because they produced a lot of cars that you couldn't get with other companies, but where a lot of other model companies started producing higher quality kits over time, they never really did. So their kits are not great in terms of detail, accuracy, you know, things that make model builders happy. So anyway, so we'll just take off those unnecessary bits of plastic there, clean it up. All right, that looks pretty good. Now there is a back piece to this seat, but we're not gonna, well, we're not gonna worry about that right now, because I want you to get an opportunity to see how painting works and all of that goes. I have not worked on a model in a while, so because, you know, my life is fucking chaos. But okay, so let's take a look at paintbrushes that you would use for model building. So these are my model paintbrushes. So these are not to be used for any of my watercolors or anything else. And you don't want to use brushes that you've used with other stuff with model paint, just because of how the chemicals will react. So as you can see, I've got a pretty wide assortment here. We've got some big brushes and we've got some teeny tiny ones, right? And unfortunately one of them looks like the cat chewed on it. I don't hate my cat. I kind of hate my cat. But anyway, so usually a brush like this is a good starting point. But it just depends on what you're trying to do and how detailed you get. I really like these long bristled brushes. I can't remember who makes these. I bought them off of online model company, God, probably back in 2015, and I don't remember what the name of the company was. But I also really like these, and these are made for Warhammer, which is like this action figure painting thing that people do. I don't really know about it. But they're made by a company called Army Painter, and I really like them. They're really high quality brushes. But anyway, so for the purpose of what we're going to paint right now, this one will do us just fine. Okay, so we've got our part. Now we need to choose the paint color, and sadly my paint colors are on the other side of my desk, so give me a second. So this is, these are Model Master paints. Model Master is my favorite brand of paints. Tamiya makes really good paints. I try to stay away from the little square bottle testers ones. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I still have some for some god unknown reason. I thought I did. Oh yeah, there they are. So these are the testers ones. Actually, that's not a terrible color. It's flat light tan. I don't really like these ones as much, and I know a lot of people out there will say that testers and model master are the same thing, and maybe they are. I don't know, but I like these ones. I like these ones better. But you know, these are cheaper and, you know, more readily available, I suppose. So anyway, so you got to shake the snot out of your paint before you use it. You're gonna shake your paint. You're gonna shake your paint. Do I have food in my beard? No, I don't. I don't think. Wouldn't be the first time. Okay, so you get your paint nice and shaken up. General rule of thumb is you shake a jar of paint for about a solid minute, and then go ahead and crack it open. Sometimes if you haven't used them in a long time, they can be an ass pain to open, like this one. There we go. So you get your paint jar open. Now, a little bit of model paint goes a long way. So you get your brush, and generally speaking, I use the paint from the cap. All right, so I just get paint on the brush there. And with model paint, it's all about long, steady, even brush strokes. And you don't have to worry about covering it, like, well, let me rephrase. You don't have to worry if, like, the paint color isn't, like, maybe dark enough or whatever. So let me you can't really see what I'm doing here. But anyway, so you get those long, steady brush strokes. And if there are details, like surface details on the kit itself, so like there's texturized, like upholstery detail on this thing, you want to go with that grain, not against it. Just so you don't get like bloopers of paint like sitting inside. But the more steady and even your brush strokes are, the less you'll get streaks in the paint. So yeah, patience wins when it comes to model building. If you try to rush, that's when accidents happen and you fuck something up. But it is what it is, right? We don't do the hobby because it's easy. So, all right, so take a look at what we've got here. So as you can see on the screen, it does not look stupendous, right? Well, that's because it's a very thin coat of paint. So if the paint were on there thick, you might not see like the variations in tone, okay? But you would lose all of the fine detail in the upholstery, which again, you can't super see on camera, but it is there. And so you're better off with a thin coat of paint, and then going back with another thin coat of paint over the top of it once it's dry, than you are with multiple thick coats of paint. Always, as a side note, always close your paint bottles securely when you're done using them. And then brush care is mission critical when you're building models. So I use 2 different bottles of paint thinner. I always have one that's clean and one that is not. And so it's like, you know, first into that one and then into the clean one. So the way you clean model brushes is you literally dip them in just under the surface of the paint, and then just like you see me doing here, it's like back and forth, and letting that thinner work through the bristles and get that out. What you don't ever want to do with model paint brushes is do like we do with watercolor, where you like shove them in there and you're like scrubbing them up against the side of the bottle and shoving them down into the bottom. You don't want to do that, right? So you probably have already seen that the color of this thinner has changed as paint has started coming off of it. So as we look at it, I don't know if you can see, there's still paint in there, but most of it's gone. Let me put my ring back on before I lose it. Okay, so then is where the other, this is actually my airbrush bottle, but it's fine. So then you use the second bottle just to make sure you get everything out of it, because once you dry enamel paint into a paintbrush, it's done. You're never going to get it back. So you really got to take good care. And then I normally have, I don't know where it is, but I like the blue paper towels from the automotive section at Walmart. I usually fold one of those in a couple of folds, so I get this thick tuft of paper towel and use it to wipe the excess paint thinner off of your brush. But I don't know where the fuck my roll of paper towel is. But anyway, so yeah, there's that part. Okay, now before you, why did I put that in there, idiot? Before you mess with this, right? So you want to let it dry. I would say at least an hour before you do your second coat of paint. I usually wait, so I'll do a coat of paint and then I won't touch it again until the next day. I usually wait, 24 hours or so before I repaint anything or mess with it or try to glue it together or anything like that. Just because once you get a fingerprint in wet paint, it's over, right? It's over. You gotta sand that paint off or strip it off and start over, which is a metric pain in the ass, and I don't like doing it. So, so I won't mess with that again for a while. Now, when it comes to painting big things, right? Like the body of our car here. So there's a couple of ways to do it. First, I recommend getting yourself one of these jobbers. They're not expensive. I don't remember how much. I think I paid like 15 bucks for both of them for the flat one that I just had in this one. If you don't have one of these, you can make yourself a stand fairly easily. But the beautiful thing about these is they allow you to put the body of the car, and then you can, spin it around and look at different angles and do whatever you need to do without touching it, which is awesome. So I'm not actually going to paint this tonight because that would be a long drawn out process. So much like we discussed with the smaller parts, there will still be seams that shouldn't be there and flash and all kinds of other goofiness on the big body of the car. So you're still going to need to very detailed inspect it. That's a pain in the ass. I'm going to have to fix that. Oh well, whatever. Okay, so let's see. Here's an example. There's a seam here that shouldn't be there. You can't see it, but you can probably hear my nail clicking over it. All right, that shouldn't be there. Well, obviously, like this thing has to come out. Okay. So you want to inspect it and look for those injection mold issues. And then around sharp corners, there will always be some work that needs to be done. So just get your sandpaper and just, go over it and clean everything up. So you definitely want to make sure you use that detailed eye when you're doing this, because once you paint it, you can't take it back, right? Okay, so using that careful eye to go through it, and then get your stand or your built one if you needed to build one. Now you can do spray paint. So let's see. So this is Model spray paint. Okay, so it's made by Model Master, same company that makes these guys. All right. Now, if you're going to use this stuff, one, shake it like crazy. You can tell I haven't used it in a while because the ball bearing's stuck. So there's a ball bearing in these. You're going to shake this. You're going to shake your spray paint for a couple of minutes before you use it. And then, fuck, no, it doesn't have a nozzle in it. I did an experiment a while ago with spray paint nozzles, and there we go. Alright, so here's a good example. Just look at the tip of that spray nozzle there. Yeah, see, it's got paint all over it. Well, that happens, right? That happens when you're using it. However, when you're done, so like let's say I just shot the car, turn the can upside down, point it in a direction you don't care about, and that'll, until no paint is coming out of it, and that'll make sure that the spray hole, is that the technical term? The spray hole stays clear, so it'll keep working. So this is chrome silver paint, and as you can see by the shape of the bottle, I've used it for stuff to sit on when I shot it with other paint. So you can rattle can it if you want to, and that's totally fine, but just be careful, because when you rattle can model paint, it orange peels really easily if you don't do it right. So just watch some YouTube tutorials or something. Okay, The other way to do it, in my favorite way, because I am just horrible with rattle cans. Just like I said, I never figured out acrylics. I never figured out rattle cans either. So I like to airbrush stuff. Let me show you what I mean. So this is my pride and joy, one of my pride and joys, I guess. This is my Aztec airbrush. My dad gave this to me 15 years ago, and I love it. So this connects to my air compressor with a rubber hose. And so you have your airbrush here, right? So, and then as you can see in the box, I have a number of different tips that do different things depending on what I'm doing. But generally speaking, for models, use this guy right here. So they're really easy to assemble. You just put your tip in, like meow. You don't want to over tighten anything. And then put a little plug in on one side. And then you get your paint cup, meow. And you put that on, like meow. And then you connect your airline to it. And then so the way it works is you press in on the button there to get, you know, the, well, of course, the tip is the right color to make my chroma key filtered out. But anyway, so when you press it and then you rock it back, so pressing it gets air to go through the nozzle, and then rocking it back changes the amount of paint that gets mixed in with it. And then you have a fine-tune adjustment back there. Yeah. What's cool about airbrushes is you can use this in it. You just got to thin it out. So you do, for every 1 part of this, you do 4 parts of this. Okay? That's pretty cool. The other thing you can do is you can use this in here. Okay? It's really easy. So you literally just get a jar or a bottle or something, and you spray paint into the jar or bottle, and then put it in the little paint hopper there, and you don't need to thin it out or change it or anything. Just do it. The thing I love about airbrushing is it makes the coat of paint very, very thin, and it's much easier to control than spray paint. Think about an airbrush as a lightsaber, right? Very precise, elegant, right? A rattle can is like Han Solo's blaster, a rudimentary weapon. Right? Effective, rudimentary. Right? So here's the problem with airbrushes. They're not cheap. A good airbrush is not cheap. Yeah, you can go to the hobby shop and you can get the like stupid little ones that like attach to a rattle can of propellant and whatever. I don't recommend that. I've never seen anybody get good results with that little goofy system. So yeah, but that's something to think about. Now, somebody asked me earlier today, in fact, that if they wanted to use automotive paint, like actual automotive paint, to color match, so like let's say, you know, their parents or they had a 62 Impala, and they wanted to build a model in the same color. Can you use actual automotive paint on a plastic model? Yes, you can. However, you have to prime the piss out of it on the front side. So you need to get model paint, all right? So thin white or thin black or thin ghost gray, depending on what color the car is. You need to get yourself a rattle can or an airbrush, and you need to prime this before you put the actual automotive paint on it. Because if you don't, that automotive paint is designed to bond with metal and, you know, other stuff. It's not designed to bond with soft plastics like styrene. So it will eat the crap out of it. It'll eat it. It'll be horrendously bad. So don't do that. Okay. On a side note, I didn't say it, and I don't know why I didn't say it. Wow, this is just a trash kit. Ugh. There are a lot of injection mold issues with this thing. It's a good thing I'm putting in a junkyard scene, huh? Anyway, I didn't mention this before, but wash your parts. Wash your parts. So because they're injection molded, there's a release agent that's on the inside of the injection mold to help the plastic not stick to it when they pull the mold apart. That release agent will cause the paint not to bond to the plastic sometimes, and it can be an ass pain to deal with if that happens. So wash your stuff on the front side. It's very, very simple to do. Yeah, just don't go crazy with it, right? So I just use a soft bristled toothbrush, dish soap, and lukewarm water. And just, you know, Don't put the soap straight on it. Like, it's really easy. I just get a jar and mix up some soap water and dip my toothbrush in it, and then rinse everything off and let it dry. Too easy. Okay. But yeah, so that's the very, very, very basics of how you build a plastic scale model. As hopefully my life gets more under control, I'm gonna start building models more and posting some time-lapse videos of builds and other nonsense that I do. But yeah, if you like the video, subscribe to my channel, my pages, and all the other shit. I'm on all the socials media. This is bad. Like, I've had a fucking K on my face all the time. Strike. Anyway, if you don't know why K means strike, I don't know that we can be friends. Anyway, yeah, that's how you build a model. Yeah, tune into my live broadcast tomorrow, right here. You'll like it. It'll be fun. Bye-bye.